All right, and we move to the sitting portion of the evening. And just in case it wasn't announced, that is Dasha Kelly and Adam Carr, and they'll be joining us throughout this interviews. We're starting our sort of cross-sector look at creative placemaking in the philanthropy space. And we have Alice Carle from the Kresge Foundation, and we have Ellen Gilligan from the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. And I think this is an interesting combination because we have both a national foundation and a community foundation. I think both play an important role in leveraging funds and in maximizing local investments, so there's an interplay between national and local philanthropy. And so I kind of want to sort of look at the different perspectives, one that might be focused on sort of the innovation and values and practice spreading, and one that's really focused on the community outcomes and think about how they interact. So I'm going to start with Alice, and you've covered a lot of why Kresge is interested in creative placemaking. So as a national foundation, though, what kinds of characteristics do you look for to indicate the potential for a successful creative placemaking project? And could you provide one or two examples that sort of speak to those characteristics?
Sure, thanks. So we've spent a lot of time in this creative placemaking space and thought pretty deeply about it. So we actually have something like 8 or 9 characteristics that we tend to look for, but we can kind of boil them down into 3 broad thoughts. First, creative placemaking to be successful really needs to be unique to place. It needs to build off of a community's assets that are already there. And those could be physical assets like a historical building stock, or it could be something less tangible like a shared cultural history or even an event that happens every year or so. Second, it needs to authentically engage the community. It can't happen to or in spite of a community. It really needs to be done with a community. Because it's really important, I think, this is an opportunity to provide voice for the people who live there. It's an opportunity to provide some control over what their communities look like, or our communities look like. And then third, we've already touched on this, it's cross-disciplinary. Creative placemaking, you can't work in a silo. And so everybody's got to think holistically and broadly about that work. And so arts and culture, in many ways, is an internally focused field, and there's lots of good reasons for that. You need to focus on artistic mission, you need to focus on finances, but to engage in creative placemaking, you really have to break out and think about the larger community issues, start to engage in policy issues, start to learn about community development and all sorts of things that are related to that kind of work. And on the other side, people who are involved in community development or health or land use, what have you, you really have to think broadly about what arts and culture can bring to the table and really invite folks to the table and have them bring those talents with them.
And is there a good example?
An example, okay. So the example that I thought of, and we have lots of them in our portfolio, but the one that I thought of is in Northeast Shores Community Development Corporation in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a neighborhood, it's a very socioeconomically diverse community that was facing issues of people moving out. And so the CDC there, run by a very smart gentleman, really worked with the community to identify community issues. They came up with a 10-year plan. The community said, we're really concerned about blight and vacancy, and they have a mix of residential and a commercial corridor. And decided to use arts and culture as a driver to address those issues in multiple ways. So they're using an artist housing strategy that really works to provide permanent housing for artists in the neighborhood, and those artists work with the neighborhoods. They are pursuing a small business strategy really to bring in creative businesses to fill in those storefronts and build off of the assets that were already there. There's the Beachland Ballroom and a couple other things that were there that they could build the energy off of. And then they're using, again, the informal arts and really that community art kind of activities that working with residents. And so I think, for me, they identify sort of those 3 things.
Great. And Ellen, as a community foundation, I assume your sort of ultimate end goal is a better community in Milwaukee. And I'd be interested to hear what sort of arts-based strategies you've seen come in the door lately and what's been compelling about them with that frame in mind.
Well, as you said, as a community foundation, we're all about place. And so our whole goal is to build a stronger, better place. And the interesting thing about a community foundation is we do touch every single element of arts and culture, the environment, education, community development, health, and human services. So some of these projects around creative placemaking bring these elements all together. So they are definitely right in the wheelhouse of many community foundations because they, as we like to say, connect the dots in so many ways. So we have had most of our arts grant making over the last few years has been as a result of a wonderful local artist named Mary Knoll, who left a wonderful bequest to the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. And we have done, under the leadership of Lynn Lucius, who I think is here, some things that really advance individual places through art. The Three Rivers Project, Ken is right here, we've invested in that, and a number of other things. So, because we have also had a community development and neighborhood initiative for a period of time. So we've tried to marry those two things to advance both of those objectives.
Excellent. And I think it's interesting in philanthropy, there's a few different ways for folks to consider proposing a creative placemaking project, right? Like some philanthropies might explicitly have creative placemaking like Kresge as their program. Others might allow for arts to apply for community development grants or allow for arts groups to apply for community development grants. And I'd be interested to sort of hear how folks who are thinking about those sort of cross-sector approaches should think about things like language and outcomes in their proposals to actually reach some of those goals that we've been talking about and be a compelling project for either a national or a community foundation grant. And either one of you can.
So while we do have program officers who focus on specific areas, and we do have some dedicated funds, we also have some unrestricted money that we can use across disciplines, if you will. But the things that I think are so compelling about some of the arts and neighborhoods projects that we've done are resident engagement, absolutely, community building, the authentic voice of neighborhood residents, the layering of multiple strategies so that, art, as I said, advances either environmental cause, a community development cause. The opportunity to connect those things are all extremely important for us.
So I would agree with all that. I think what's changed for us as an arts and cultural program is that our portfolio has broadened quite a bit. So we fund not only arts and cultural organizations, but many non-arts and cultural organizations that happen to be using arts and culture as a driver for some other community agenda item. So even the example I used was a CDC. But for us, it would be things like how is the activity that an organization or an artist or anybody is proposing, how does it connect into that larger community identified issue? And it could be lots of things. But for us, it's that connectivity, and that connectivity is both coming, or that vision is coming both from the bottom, from the grassroots, but also that there is some top-down, not top-down, but some infrastructure there to help support that work in the middle.
I think it's interesting when we go around and talk around the country, sometimes we're talking to arts groups and they're afraid that community development groups are going to come in and steal their money. And, we go to place practitioners and they're like, oh, the arts groups are now all of a sudden coming into our space. And, I like to think of it as the pie is just getting bigger on both ends. And I generally like to sort of encourage that kind of cross applying. And I'm interested in also what kind of challenges do folks run into when applying for, something that's sort of a cross sector or something that's out of what other folks might traditionally see as their wheelhouse?
So I would say that it's all about catalyzing change and all about outcomes, right? So as Alice said earlier, none of these, even if you divided the pie, none of these sectors have enough money to make a significant difference on their own in any of the areas that we're really trying to impact. So from my funder's perspective, the opportunity that one activity catalyzes another and accelerates the change, whether it comes from the arts sector, whether it comes from the environmental sector, whether it comes from the community development sector, it's all about catalyzing and accelerating change. And the opportunity to demonstrate that whatever project is being proposed from whatever sector is really an important outcome. And I just have to say that for somebody like me who came out of the community development background, we were always talking to ourselves. And it's really wonderful to be in a room of creative people, and I had breakfast with some of the people that you're going to hear from later on, and it was fabulous. The ideas, the creativity around how you can advance neighborhood improvement is tremendous. So welcome to the party as far as I'm concerned.
So I would echo that, it's clearly that cross-sector, get out of your silo work that is interesting and sparking this whole creative placemaking movement. The barrier, though, is that's hard work, is to think, you've come out of a discipline or an area that you're sort of an expert in, and you've got language that goes with that and ideas. And so when you mix it up, it's hard, because even when you say the word community engagement, that means something different in the health world that it might mean in the arts world and community development. And so you've got to be really explicit about what are you after, what could we all bring to the table? Because I think in community, it's hard to really break down work. And even within Kresge, I'm sorry to keep going, we have 6 program areas, right? And it's really easy for all of us to be really siloed. And so we continually try to break down the barriers, even within one office to the next, about how can I partner with the environment team? How can we partner with the health team? And they have a whole language and world that they live in, and we're trying to cross sectors even within Kresge.
I think that's such an important point for anybody who's sort of in a silo and trying to think about comprehensive community change. Just so everybody knows, the way we're going to work today, we're going to do the interviews when we have about a minute or so left. These are my cues, and then we'll keep going through the agenda. But if there are any sort of final thoughts on sort of philanthropy and creative placemaking and where we're all headed as funders, either on the local or national level, just to sort of punctuate any points.
Well, I was actually asked to talk about typeface, but then I realized that Adam and Dasha are here, and they were critical partners in typeface, so I feel a little silly talking about typeface, but it really characterizes all the elements of a fabulous place-based, creative place-based initiative. But the other thing I will just in closing say that somebody at breakfast this morning said that it helps people, these kinds of projects help people see what's possible from the inside out of a community. And I thought that was a great way to characterize it. I'm sorry if I stole somebody's lines.
Great. Anything else?
I'm not sure I have any words of wisdom, but other than, again, I think this is a really interesting time, and it's a really great opportunity to explore this new world. I think philanthropy does have some things to bring to it. We are an unusual beast in that we can take risks, and we can think about long-term outcomes, and we can see kind of the bird's eye view and make connections. And so whether you're at the national level or the local level, those things are all true across the board. And so, having philanthropy along with private and public funding, I think, is so key.
Great. Well, we'll turn it back over to our folks here.
Creational Trail, the Artery. Creational Trails, a placemaking experience in Milwaukee, is a project of the Greater Milwaukee Committee with Milwaukee and Be in Tween, funded by ArtPlace America. As part of Creational Trails, the Artery is an 8-acre linear parcel of a former rail corridor that extends the Beer Line Trail to connect Harambe and River West.
From the vacant, abandoned, discarded, finding, creating, grinding, obsessing to find relationship among people. between people and land.
Be in Tween is a social and spatial network, improvising spaces to build community. Their mission is to make art do work. Identifying unused urban infrastructure and facilitating cooperative partnerships, they work to evolve marginal areas into neighborhood amenities, encouraging education, engagement, and empowerment.
Introducing place through people, people through place, like swings appearing beneath a bridge, finding new purpose for ourselves and our space.
In the spring and summer of 2014, the Artery will explore how a public park can develop through the arts. Be in Tween, in collaboration with local artists and placemakers living and working in nearby neighborhoods, will generate a performance series, sculptural installations, including seating made from recycled tires, and murals on the exterior of industrial buildings facing the trail.
Access to tools can be a barrier to those who lack, existing in a field of disparity. But we all have something, creation based in community members, what is innate to the person.
Additionally, the pilot version of I Can Too Lab will occur at the Artery. Housed in renovated cargo containers, I Can Too Lab is a digital and fabrication environment for youth who engage with on-site workshops offered with local art and design instructors.
From the vacant, abandoned, discarded, proposing new purpose.
Riverworks Development Corporation, the City of Milwaukee, School Factory, Giselle's Art Studio, Stillwater's Collective, and Urban Roots are key community partners for economic and community development at the Artery.
Thank you.